If you spent any time online recently, you've probably seen those pretty sensational headlines.
Oh, yeah. They were everywhere.
Google takes over the iPhone, or, that Apple had finally admitted defeat in the whole AI race. It was framed as this massive failure.
It definitely created a lot of market chatter. I mean, when you have two giants like Apple and Alphabet, Google's parent, who are always at each other's throats for OS dominance,
right,
and then they strike a huge multi-year deal, the noise is just inevitable.
Absolutely. And that's our mission in this deep dive, to cut right through that noise. We want to get into the precise mechanics, the strategic thinking, and what this billion-dollar partnership really means financially. And most importantly, what this all means for you, for the iPhone user, especially around your data and Apple's whole privacy promise.
And that's the key, because if you look just below the surface, this is so far from a surrender. It's actually a very calculated strategic play. The reports all confirm it. Apple has picked Google's Gemini model to basically power their future AI features. That includes a brand new, much smarter Siri. This isn't giving up. It's a way to accelerate.
So let's start with those mechanics, because I think that's where all the sensationalism kind of falls apart.
Yeah.
The reports were very clear that this is not some system-level replacement. It's not like Google is taking control of Siri or Apple Intelligence.
Not at all.
So what is Apple paying $1 billion a year for?
They're buying access. Access and licensing. That's it. It's a huge financial commitment, don't get me wrong. $1 billion a year really shows how serious they are about catching up.
But it's a licensing deal.
It is strictly a licensing deal.
Okay, so if the money is just for access, not control, how does this massive 1.2 trillion parameter Gemini model fit inside an iPhone without, becoming the iPhone? What's its actual job?
So the sources describe its role as a kind of high-level mentor.
A mentor.
A mentor. The idea is that Gemini is never the AI you actually talk to. It works completely in the background, helping train and rapidly improve Apple's own models.
The ones they call the Apple Foundation models.
Yeah, exactly. Their own proprietary intelligence.
So wait, if I ask Siri a really complex question, my phone isn't just sending that prompt directly over to a full Gemini model somewhere.
That is correct. The AI you face, the thing you interact with, is 100% driven by Apple's own tech. The interface, the logic, all of it is controlled inside the Apple ecosystem.
So Gemini's job is just to make Apple's own models smarter, faster.
Precisely. It's drawing on the immense power of Google's model to mature its own.
And this wasn't some last-minute panic raid. The sources say Apple was looking at a few different partners.
Oh, absolutely. They did their homework. They were evaluating models from Anthropic, from OpenAI.
The big players.
The big players. And you can see this in their internal development. They were apparently running 2 parallel tracks for the new Siri. One was codenamed Linwood, that was the pure homegrown Apple model. And the other was Glenwood, which was designed from the start to integrate outside tech. So picking Gemini for Glenwood just shows they prioritize getting that top-tier performance right now.
Here's where it gets really interesting, especially for anyone listening. The whole data privacy guarantee.
This is the core of it.
I mean, Apple's entire brand is built on privacy. Google's business is built on, using data.
Yeah.
How do those two things possibly coexist in a deal like this?
It's the most critical part of the whole agreement. And it's why Apple was so careful to talk about a strict data isolation principle.
Right.
We have to be really clear. This new AI deal is completely separate from that other, much older deal where Google pays Apple billions just to be the default search engine.
Two totally different things with different data rules.
Exactly. Different beasts entirely.
So how strong is this data isolation firewall? Can we really be sure my data is safe when Google's model is, by its very nature, designed to learn from data?
It all comes down to where the processing happens. Apple is the gatekeeper here, and they've built the whole thing around 3 key rules.
Okay, what are they?
First, the big Gemini model never runs directly on your device. Second, it never ever touches what Apple calls terminal data.
So, my personal stuff. Photos, messages.
Your photos, your messages, your habits, all of it. And third, any interaction you have with Apple Intelligence is processed in one of 2 places, either locally, right there on your device.
Which is their preference for speed and security.
Right, or it's processed on Apple-controlled secure servers. Google is never in that loop.
So Apple is basically just licensing the brain, but they keep total control over the body and the nervous system.
That is a perfect way to put it. Google provides the training boost, the raw power for the Apple Foundation models. They are not watching user data in real time. It's a fundamental difference from, say, using a third-party app or even just doing a normal Google search.
Okay, let's talk about the why, the strategy behind it. Because there was a lot of criticism, right? People like Elon Musk basically called it a massive failure.
Yeah, that criticism, I think, really misses the point about the timeline. This is a classic move. Analysts are calling it strategic borrowing.
Strategic borrowing. I like that.
It's all about getting a competitive edge in the short term while your own long-term solution is still in the oven, so to speak.
So what's the timeline they're trying to bridge here?
This is the key detail from the sources. Apple's own self-developed trillion parameter model, the one that could truly go head-to-head with Google or OpenAI.
Yeah.
It's not expected to be fully ready until around 2027.
2027, wow. I mean, in the AI arms race, 2 years is. It's a lifetime.
It is. They just couldn't risk rolling out an iPhone 17 or a new iOS that felt years behind the competition on AI.
So this is about making sure new devices, like maybe the iPhone 17 Pro Max, and new software, like an iOS 26.4, feel state-of-the-art today.
Exactly. It's a performance boost right now. It ensures they stay in the game during this really critical transition period.
This really does feel like Apple's classic playbook. My mind immediately goes to Apple Maps.
That analogy is used directly in the source materials. It's the perfect comparison.
Right. They used Google Maps for years and years.
Until their own mapping service was good enough to stand on its own 2 feet. It's the exact same move. You integrate the best tech out there to keep your users happy today while you buy yourself the time to build your own thing right.
So what does that long-term vision look like? Their own thing. Is R&D still going full steam ahead?
It's actually accelerating. The future of Apple Intelligence isn't just about a big language model. It's about deep system integration. They have a framework for it called App Intents.
App Intents. Okay, what are those, and why are they so important if they're using Google's tech for now?
So App Intents are basically these very specific APIs. They let Apple Intelligence understand what an app does, its function, and then it can execute complex tasks across multiple apps.
Without needing to see all the data inside them?
Precisely. So imagine, instead of just answering a question, Siri could use App Intents to check your calendar, read a specific message, and then talk to a third-party travel app to book you a flight and set a reminder. All of it happening securely within the OS.
So the AI isn't just talking to the phone, it's woven into the phone's operating system.
Exactly. That's the end goal. A totally private, super efficient experience that leverages that unique functional depth. And look, even after 2027, the sources say Apple might keep Gemini around as like an auxiliary training tool.
For what? Like a sparring partner?
Something like that. For things like reinforcement learning or just comparing effects, it future-proofs their own R&D.
Let's shift over to Google's side of this.
Yeah.
They get $1 billion, which is nice, but the market reaction for them was, well, it was much, much bigger than the fee.
It was immense. The deal was this huge validation. It instantly cemented Google as the leading provider of this foundational AI tech. The news dropped on a Monday.
And their stock just took off.
It rallied so hard that it led to a historic milestone.
The $4 trillion valuation.
For the first time ever, Alphabet's market cap hit $4 trillion. And to put that into perspective, that makes them only the 4th company in history to hit that mark.
Wow.
The market is basically saying, we believe you own this foundational layer of AI.
And this wasn't just a one-off bump. It feels like the capstone on a really strong year for Alphabet and AI.
Oh, absolutely. They were the best performing of all the big 7 tech stocks in 2025. I think the stock surged over 65%. Investors have just been rewarding them for these huge tech leaps.
So beyond just the sheer size of Gemini, what other leaps are driving that confidence?
It's really 2 things. First, you have the release of Gemini 3, which is, extremely competitive against OpenAI's GPT-5. But the other piece, which is just as important, is the hardware.
The custom chips.
Yep. They released their 7th gen custom AI chip, codenamed Ironwood. It's a tensor processing unit, a TPU.
And why is building your own chip like Ironwood so important?
Because if you're going to build a model as big and complex as Gemini, you can't just use off-the-shelf parts. Building a custom TPU lets Google optimize the actual computer architecture for the exact kind of math that these models do.
So it gives them a massive speed and efficiency advantage.
A massive advantage. It makes them the natural partner for anyone who needs to license this kind of top-tier AI.
But at the same time, while they're being this infrastructure layer for Apple, they're also trying to aggressively monetize their own AI. There was other news around their ad business.
Yes, and this is the fascinating contrast to the Apple deal. Google is going all in on integrating AI into its core business, advertising. They're rolling out new personalized ad functions right into their Gemini shopping tools.
Which is a defensive move, right? Against chatbots that just give you an answer instead of a link.
It's a critical defensive move. They need to protect that search ad revenue. So the AI is becoming this hyper-sophisticated sales funnel.
So instead of just the sponsored link, what happens?
Instead of a link, the AI decides the exact right moment to show you an exclusive deal or a tailored offer. It's all based on your real-time behavior, and what it predicts is your likelihood to buy. It's a huge pivot to keep the ad business profitable.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this? Let's just recap the big takeaway here.
I think the core takeaway is that this is a really sophisticated, non-invasive tactical move by Apple. They're paying a premium, that $1 billion, to borrow time and expertise. It makes sure their user experience is top tier right now without giving up on their privacy principles. And in turn, it lets Google cement its status as the foundational AI provider. That $4 trillion valuation proves it.
And the relevance for you, the listener, is you should see an immediate, pretty noticeable upgrade in AI on your iPhone. A smarter Siri, a more capable Apple Intelligence.
Right.
Without that fear that you've suddenly given all your data to Google.
Yeah.
That technical barrier is still there.
It is. However, this entire deep dive, it really points to this growing tension that you need to watch. Because while Apple is fiercely protecting your data on the front end,
With things like data isolation.
exactly, on the back end, Google is simultaneously building AI to track and monetize your shopping intentions. So the final question, the thing for you to think about is this. As AI gets baked into every single operating system, does the technical method licensing versus direct access matter more than the overall commercial goals of the companies involved?
That is the real strategic puzzle going forward.